Hi, I'm Lisa. I am with the Share Project here in Haywood County, and we've been doing an ongoing series of interviews that highlight some of the resources in the area, the treatment centers in the area, recovery options for people in Haywood County. And at the Share Project, we know that everybody's recovery path is a little bit different. And for that reason, there needs to be different options for them to choose from and find what works for them. And you may have heard it said, I'm sure you have heard it said, that the opposite of addiction is connection.
Absolutely.
And that is what Celebrate Recovery Haywood offers. And
Absolutely.
Today I am with Christina Conard. She is going to tell us more about Celebrate Recovery Haywood, kind of give us a little bit of history on them, what their mission statement is, tell us what they offer actually right here in Haywood County. But I would like for you to start just with a little bit of your own personal story, your own personal history. Are you from here? Some of the basics like that, family, those kinds of things, and then as well as history, what your history is with substance use. If you don't mind, yes. Yes.
Okay, I grew up, I was born in Michigan, but I grew up in Candler. I haven't been in Haywood County for very long, 5 years, I think.
Okay.
But I went to school at Inca. Growing up, I was always the perfect child. I had to do everything perfect. I was perfectionist. I grew up in a very rough house. There was always turmoil and fighting, domestic violence. I had both parents who were alcoholics and drug addicted and fighting all the time. And so I grew up at a very early age learning how to manipulate my time to please other people. So I learned very early how to be a people pleaser. Making sure that the house is spotless and making sure that everything is kosher and walking on eggshells. So when you grow up in a family like that and you learn at a very young age how to do things like that, some people go one way with it and some people go another. And it just kind of depends on your personality, I guess. So I went the way of trying to do everything perfect. I got perfect grades. And then I hit some roadblocks, and one of the things I like to say is that addiction that trauma is the gateway drug.
Yes.
So probably, very, very large majority of people who are addicts have come from some sort of trauma.
Yes.
Or mental health background. And we have learned how to self-medicate, and for lack of a better word, and that's what I did. I went to school, I did really good, and when I was 17, my best friend died in a car accident. We got hit by a bus that had been transformed to an RV, and she died instantly. I almost died.
So you were in the same accident?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
We were they called us frickin' frack in school. We were very, very close together, and she was my only oasis, my only out away from the turmoil at home. I pretty much lived with her, and when that happened, it really affected me. And then within the same year, I was also with another one of my best friends, and a man got into our car with a gun, and he took us on top of a mountain and raped us. And so when these kinds of things happen to you, it's kind of like earthquake shattering, the ground, and it just, yes, exactly, it's life changing. And again, some people go one way, some people go another. My best friend that was with me when we got raped, she went the route of going into drugs right away, and like selling herself and stuff like that. And I was the opposite. I didn't want anything to do with it. I was very, very prideful. I felt like I was better than the drug addicts in my family. And my friends, I could never be like that, never be a drug addict. I couldn't possibly do that. Went to nursing school, got my nursing license, got married because I no longer had the out with my best friend at her house, and so my only other out of the house was to get married, and that's what I did. So we got married, and right away it was rough. My ex-husband was a serial cheater. Our relationship was good for the most part, but he cheated a lot. And so my life just kind of kept going like that. Fast forward probably, 4 or 5 years, I started to have a lot of pain from the rape and the car accident. And so I went to the doctor, naturally. And the doctor started giving me pain pills and Xanaxes. And one of the things that happens with so many addicts, especially people who get on opiates or prescription drugs, is the doctors do not tell you that this is going to affect you in every way possible. Yes. They don't tell you that it's going to change your life. They just give you more and give you more and give you more until they know that you're an addict, and then they take them away. In my case, I remember I was working night shift as a nurse, and I remember waking up to go get my son off the school bus, and I was sick, but I couldn't figure out why. I had no symptoms. I was essentially dope sick. And I couldn't figure out why, and I remember digging through my purse and finding a pill and taking it, and a few minutes later I felt better. Wow. And it was like a light bulb, and I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I've got a problem. And I wish that I could say at that point I went and got help, but it went downhill from there. I was very high functioning for a very long while, but anybody in that situation cannot hold it up. Can't hold it up. And I ended up losing everything, from my house to my cars to my children, just everything. Wow. So, and that was a very dark path. And I remember thinking, I remember calling my mom and my cousin and stuff after, I was addicted, and telling them how sorry I was for being so judgmental and, judging them for so long and being so prideful. Because it essentially takes over your mind. It takes over everything. You're not the same person. You don't do the same things that you would normally do. It becomes your whole life. You wake up, and that's the first thing you think about, and you do what you have to, and that's it. Yeah. And it took over my life.
It's the sole focus.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, how long have you been sober?
December 8th, I'll be 6 years clean.
Okay. Yep. Awesome. And what brought you around to that point then? You said, you were high functioning for a long time. What did it take to get to that point? How many times did you try on your own? What was the final turning point for you?
I went down that road for a long time. I was down low enough to where I was homeless. I was living with my drug dealer. I was essentially depending on him for everything. And I had already lost my son, and I would go see my daughter every once in a while. I had come to a point that I did not think that you could get clean and stay clean, because I had tried, because I still had that want to be good and that want to do better in me. So I tried multiple times. I did, I tried detox. I tried going to treatment centers. I tried medication assisted treatment. I tried everything. And it was very short-lived every time. And so I honestly, deep inside, did not feel that you could get clean and stay clean. I really didn't. And 6 years ago, I detoxed. I had reached the lowest point in my life, to the point where nobody would even talk to me in my family. Even the bad parts of the family didn't even want to talk to me. Like, that's how bad I had gotten. And when you reach a bottom, there's really nowhere else to go at that point. And I went and got detoxed, and I started medication assisted treatment. And I got invited to New Covenant Church. And I remember the first day I was there for about 5 minutes. And I just was radically changed by God. And that for me is what changed my recovery. I know that can work for, I've seen it work over and over and over again. I know it's not the only treatment, but for me, that was what changed around, and that's how I know that you can get clean and stay clean now.
Right.
So,
Yes. Well, congratulations on
Thank
that.
you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. So, tell us about Celebrate Recovery then. Was there a Celebrate Recovery at New Covenant at that time? Did you just join? Did you start it? Because you are head of Celebrate Recovery, if I'm not mistaken,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay.
I started going to Celebrate Recovery when it was at a different church that was
Okay.
right down the road. A friend of mine had invited me, and at the point when I first started Celebrate Recovery, I know a lot of people have the problem with going to meetings. They're shy and backwards to go into these meetings because you always feel like you're the only one. Nobody could possibly have done anything as bad as you, and it's just very difficult to get into these meetings when you have this kind of self-doubt. And I remember going to the meetings multiple times and even going to the parking lot and not going in. Or I would go and then I wouldn't go back for a few weeks.
So Celebrate, let's back up just a touch for anybody that might not know exactly what Celebrate Recovery is. Is it then like AA, NA, so it is a support group based organization, right?
Celebrate Recovery is exactly like NA or AA, with the distinction of it is Christ-centered, meaning our principles are loosely based on AA and NA principles, but they are also based on the Beatitudes in the Bible, so they're based on biblical principles.
Right. Instead of the 12 steps.
Yes.
Okay.
So they're kind of related. I mean, the same, you do the same work essentially, but you just put Christ in the center of it. And
is the higher power.
Yes. And with Celebrate Recovery, the other distinction from NA and AA is the fact that we are a fellowship, obviously. We are support. We don't try to fix each other. We just are there for each other. But it's not just for drugs or alcohol. It is for any hurt, habit, hang up, addiction, anything that has caused, something to make your life unmanageable. And that can be anywhere from grief to depression, gambling, codependency. I mean, there's just
many other addictions besides drugs.
And a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, they don't put it into the same category.
Right.
Work can be an addiction.
Right. And we have that, definitely have that problem with, people say, well, what's recovery? There's just people who are addicts there. But honestly, 1 out of 3 people that come to Celebrate Recovery are there for drugs or alcohol. Right. Most of the people there are for other issues.
Wow.
We believe in treatment as a whole, like as a family, as a unit with, everybody. When you're an addict, you affect everybody in your life. And it's rough. Addiction is rough on the addict, but we ruin the people around us. We ruin their lives. And not that we mean to, but their lives are ruined too. They need treatment just as much as we do. And that's what we shoot for. We shoot for the whole family coming up and doing testimonies.
Okay, excellent. I was gonna ask that if it was open to or, welcoming to family members as well. You know, kind of like Al-Anon would be kind of thing. Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We actually have a children's and teens group as well. We haven't launched like the specific program for them yet because it runs in parallel to the adult, and it's just treatment of the whole family. It's just making them understand what they went through and healing from what they went through as well.
Right.
Because they've went through just as much as we have.
Right.
So.
And so how long have they been in Haywood County then? When did you start your chapter of it?
I have been with Celebrate Recovery for 6 years.
Okay.
I was with Faith Community for about 18 months, and I went to a training summit the second year that we were there. Actually getting into leadership and serving is what helped me to be able to be comfortable and to be able to start coming every week and being more active. I went to the training summit, and then while I was there, I got a nudge from God to start another one at my own church. And it really worked out crazy because I came back from the summit that year and I talked to my pastor at my church and they were like, wow, this is really like works perfect with how our DNA is here. And they were like, but we just started this new pastor and we want to wait a couple months before we start something again.
Right.
So we were like, well, we're going to put a pin in it until spring. So we did that, and it was crazy because the leaders at Faith Community, the first day of spring, they said they were leaving. They ended up moving out of state.
Right.
And so essentially what we did was we just moved from Faith Community to New Covenant. A lot of new people, we had a lot of new leaders and a lot of people from there, so it was almost new, but we were able to, dissolve all of the, this resources and stuff. We were able to move to the other facility instead of starting from scratch. And then we had some people who were already trained and that kind of thing, so it worked out better.
Yeah, absolutely.
But New Covenant has been a really, really good spot for Celebrate Recovery because they believe in community and they believe in inner healing, and that's what we're all about, is healing the parts of us that are, because addiction is a problem, and when you start recovery, that's what you start recovery for, is to fix that problem. However, that problem usually stems from the trauma or whatever, mental health issue. Addiction is just a Band-Aid for what you're going through. So if you don't, and we firmly believe this, if you don't heal whatever that is, then it's just going to keep coming back up. There's times of your life, seasons of your life where you are weaker, where things are getting thrown at you, you're having a harder time, and it makes you're more vulnerable, and you have more of a chance of relapse. Relapse is very high with addicts, so we do our best to make sure that we have a relapse plan. We make sure that we don't, put ourselves in a position to even let that happen. And so that it's hard to do sometimes, but making sure that we heal whatever it was that brought us to addiction to begin with is key to that, because if you don't do that, you're just going to go back to where you started.
Absolutely. Okay, a couple things. Let's pick apart a few things you were talking about in there. So tell me a little bit more about the actual meeting. Do they meet once a week? Do they offer, like AA meetings? You can find a meeting pretty much every day of the week. And then answer that, and then tell me what a meeting would look like. Do you follow, a lesson plan, if you will? So they're actually learning, or is it just a place for someone to go and vent, if you will, or unload? Because there would be a place for that as well, I would think. So tell me about that a little bit.
That's a great question, because a lot of people, they don't know, so they don't come because they don't know. So I want to give a little bit of background about Celebrate Recovery. A man named John Baker started Celebrate Recovery. This year will be 30 years ago. And he was going to AA when God gave him Celebrate Recovery. And when he wrote the steps and he wrote the program for Celebrate Recovery, he knew that if he didn't, somebody else was going, that God was going to have somebody else do it. And since he started Celebrate Recovery, he started it in Saddleback Church in California, which is a huge church. At this point, his pastor Rick Warren is he's a famous preacher. 80% of their leaders, Celebrate Recovery leaders, are leaders in the church now. So it's like Celebrate Recovery is a leader manufacturer, if you will. But Celebrate Recovery, what we do is we do meet every week. Every Thursday we meet, our chapter, but we have over 35,000 churches that have a Celebrate Recovery in them. So we have a national team, and we have state reps in the area, but each church has their own ministry. So what happens is you're able to find a meeting in your area pretty much every night of the week if you go to different churches in the area.
Right.
We meet every Thursday. I know, like the Rock meets every Tuesday. And then there's other meetings around here that meet on different days. So you can get a meeting, a Celebrate Recovery meeting, almost every day of the week. And we do recommend also going to secular meetings too if you can't get to a Celebrate Recovery meeting. But what we do look like is we don't just come in fellowship. We do the same thing. We do a lesson every week. We rotate between a lesson and a testimony. So one week we do a lesson, the next week we do a testimony, and we try to bring in people who are local for testimonies, people in the area, and then we will also bring people in from other parts of Celebrate Recovery. So that gives people the opportunity to see what this ministry has actually done.
Yes.
Because when we go to these training summits, we're able to see with our eyes the thousands of people this ministry has actually changed. But we worship every week. We do either a lesson or a testimony. And then I think probably one of the most important things that we do every week is that we break up into gender-specific small groups.
Okay.
And it's usually gender-specific, issue-specific. If we have enough people, sometimes we don't. But you break up into these small groups, and basically you're able to find people who are going through the same thing as you. And we go around the circle, we make sure that it's safe, we use guidelines, we make sure that it's anonymity and confidentiality is required, stuff like that. And we just go around the circle and we just share and support each other. And it's so freeing to be able to just let stuff out, whatever it is you're struggling with that week or whatever. And sometimes it takes the new people a couple times to share, to get comfortable. Because it's hard to share about these hard things with people that you don't know. And that's basically what we're trying to do. We're trying to get a community. We call each other family, because that's what we end up being. We end up just being a big family.
Right.
But yes, and then we also do step studies, which is deeper work. I know you've heard of AA and NA doing step works. And basically what you do is you have another group on another night of the week, and you meet in a smaller, more intimate setting, and we have book work that we do.
Okay.
And we go through, we have homework that we do each week, and then we come back in as a group and we go over all of these questions, basically. And what these questions do is they give us the opportunity to reach in and search for and find those issues that I was talking about earlier that have caused our addictions and our impulsive behaviors and our hurts and our habits. And because sometimes we don't know what it is that has caused us to get in this space in our head. And what happens is when we go through these questions, it's just amazing. We have really deep work and we're able to heal.
Right.
And even if the question doesn't correspond to us at that time, the next one will, and eventually. And the step studies usually take between 9 months and a year.
Wow.
So they're very detailed, very, healing.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So, are all the leaders in Celebrate Recovery in recovery?
Yes.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yes.
So peer led, if you will. And how many leaders are there in your group? Are you the only one?
We have 9 right now.
Okay. Wow.
We've had more, we've had less.
That's a lot.
COVID has brought our participant and leadership down quite a bit because we had went to Zoom meetings.
Okay, I was going to ask if there was a virtual option.
And a lot of people have gotten used to that, and they just
and so you do still offer that?
Well, we don't personally because we don't have enough leaders to do both.
Right.
We do Zoom meetings if we don't meet in person.
Okay.
And if you want to do Zoom meetings, you can't come to an in-person, can find you a group that does do it.
Got it.
So either way, you can get that if you need it, even if it's not with us. So.
Are the, you said there's different chapters, even here locally. Are they all pretty much on the same lesson at the same time?
We all share the same DNA. No, we're not on the same lesson.
Okay.
We all go through the same 25 lessons.
Right.
We all have the same DNA, meaning we have best practices that each group has to abide by. We have to do the same, like our lessons have to include are across like certain things.
Right.
And you know, each group has their own special things that you add in, but so when you go to one Celebrate Recovery meeting, you know that you're going to get certain things.
Yes. Yeah.
Each one again is different,
That
but you
part
know
is
you're going to get
consistent.
those main things no matter where you go to.
Yeah.
And we have state reps that come around and
Okay.
you know,
kind of
like
check on those
audit
things,
and
if you
stuff
will.
like
Okay.
that. Yes.
Well, that's great. That's accountability. I
Yes,
think that
it is.
there is a place for that kind of thing. Absolutely.
Amazing.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Okay, so let's, another thing, this might be a little more on the controversial side. You brought it up though, so I'm gonna go ahead and ask it. My assumption about Celebrate Recovery, and it may not be right, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my assumption about Celebrate Recovery is that they wouldn't be real keen on medicated assisted treatment, that they would want it to be a abstinence-based only recovery plan. Am I wrong on that?
You would be wrong.
Okay, yay. I don't mind to be wrong.
You're right. It seems to be very controversial, and I personally feel like I started in that treatment. I feel like medication assisted treatment is the gold standard of treatment if it is done right. It can be misused. It can be, and that it can be the case in anything that you do.
Absolutely.
And it has gotten a bad name somehow. You know, sometimes in different settings. And I hear a lot of times that you are replacing one drug with another.
Yes. We've talked about that some in these
That's not the
interviews.
case.
Yes. Yeah.
That's not the case. You're not getting high anymore. This medication is changing your brain chemistry. It is helping you to continue to live your life instead of going through detox and not being able to live your life. If it's done right, they also make you go through therapy, counseling, all of these things you still have to go through.
Yes.
You just don't go get drugged and you're not just drugged up all day. People do abuse it, you know.
Yes.
And again, that's with anything, but they try to, you know, they drug test, they do what they can. You can't stop everybody, I don't think. But Celebrate Recovery does not, we would never judge anyone for any kind of treatment. One of the pastors, one of the summits told us, it doesn't matter how we get to where we get to in our recovery. It doesn't matter which road we take to, as long as we get there.
Yeah.
And God's going to get us where He wants us, regardless of which road we take. And we would never judge anyone for going that route if that's what they need. Again, everybody's recovery is different.
Yes.
Everybody needs, some people need that, and they do much better at it, and they can be clean forever. And I wouldn't consider you not clean going to treatment.
Yeah. Well, that's great news. That is very good news to hear. Yes. Let's see, there was another question I thought of in there. See if I can come up with it. You go ahead and say if there's anything else. Well, I think about it because it was something that you said in there. Oh, I know. Where in the scheme of things, you know, do people come to you pretty much right out of the gate? Would they even possibly come to a meeting and still be, you know, using drugs, using alcohol, and you allow that at any point, or do you like to see them already be in some kind of state of soberness?
Obviously, it is ideal to not have a person who is under the influence coming to a treatment group where people are going to be triggered by that.
Yes.
Obviously. However, we are not going to turn somebody away that's coming for treatment. What we would do is we would manage it, as in our leaders are trained to talk to those people, bring them aside and say, hey, look, we may have to ask you to leave if, you know.
Yeah.
But people come to us in all different walks of their recovery. We have people who have come, you know, under the influence and nodding out in their recovery, but they're still there. You know, they've still made that effort to get there. And we recognize that, we celebrate that. We don't condone it, but, and then we have people who, you know, I think probably the best way is to do at least go through detox first, you know, and then start from there, because you can have a clearer head.
Clearer
Yeah.
head, yeah.
But again, that's just like I was saying with the medication assisted treatment. We all have a different road on our
Yes.
recovery, and some of us, it's just rockier. Relapses there's a high percentage. It really is.
Yeah.
It's part of every.
In fact, I
relapse.
think, if you could probably come up with a percentage, I'm sure it's out
I think
there somewhere.
it was like
people that
80
do
something
than don't.
percent
Yeah.
at one point.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It was like there was nobody who
Yes.
was not going to relapse.
Yeah.
It was 80 something percent. So that's why we do those relapse prevention plans, and they do those pretty much at any treatment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of place that you.
I think that's wise. I think it's wise for a family to have in place,
We definitely recommend, as soon as we get, new people coming in, we get them oriented to how we do things, try to get them comfortable enough to share, and try to help them find somebody they're comfortable enough to ask to sponsor them, to be
That was a question.
partners.
That was my next question, as a matter of fact. So answer that. Do they have a sponsor, like in?
Some of
Or
them will come with a sponsor, if they're farther along in their treatment, they may already have a sponsor.
And that sponsor comes from Celebrate Recovery?
No, you don't have to come to the meeting to,
Okay.
Whoever
Where does
your
that
sponsor
come
is,
from?
they can have met them. If they came with a sponsor, they may have met them at their AA or their other therapy, whatever that may be. If they meet them with us, they normally meet them in that small group that I was telling you about.
Okay.
They pick somebody that they can relate to, somebody that has gone through the same issues.
Right.
A sponsor has to have been in treatment for at least a year. They have to have been through the step study.
Okay.
And if they relapse or if they ever get onto that path, they can't do that anymore, because a sponsor is somebody who is ahead of you in treatment, somebody who can help walk you through, somebody who can help you in crisis situations when you are triggered or when you have burning desires or whatever the issue. They're the ones who you're going to call at 3 o'clock in the morning when you are wanting to go get high and you don't because you call them. And then you have accountability partners, and those are the people who are on the same path as you are, but they're on the same, around the same spot as you. They're not far in their treatment. They've just, they're on the same walk as you, and you give each other accountability.
Yes.
You say, they miss a meeting and you call them up and say, hey, I seen that you weren't at the meeting tonight. What's going on? Is something going on? What can I do to help you? So it's like you have support, and then you also have a mentor as well.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Sounds like a great system, if you will.
I have been
way
changed.
of doing things, yes.
Yeah, and I've seen thousands and thousands of people be changed by this ministry, so I definitely believe in it.
All right. Do you face stigma? I think that's about the only other question. I'm sure in your drug use days, I'm sure you did then, but do you find that still when you tell people, hey, I run a Celebrate Recovery group, do you feel like you still get a little bit of that, or?
Absolutely. I think we've come a long way as far as being able to show people what addiction is, and that it's not so much of a moral failing as it is a disease. But we obviously haven't reached everybody, and a lot of people still think, oh, well, once an addict, always an addict, or just these things that people are brought up to believe.
Yes.
I am a nurse, and so I have went through treatment. I went through a lot of stuff to get my nursing license back, so I face stigma when people find out that I've been in recovery, so I face a lot there. And then when people find out that I lead a ministry, they automatically assume the worst. So
what a shame.
It is, it really is. But I think we've come a long way
I agree.
with it.
I agree.
6 years ago, even when I wasn't clean, it was a lot farther back than it is now. We have been able to reach a lot of people. I think the opioid epidemic, which has been what ruined me, and it's ruined a lot of people, it has actually shed light as well. It has been able to do that because people are waking up. Well, prescription pills are given to you by a doctor, and I even said that to myself for the first 2-3 years I was using, is I legitimately have pain. I am legitimately prescribed this medication.
Wouldn't give it to me if it was
exactly. The doctor wouldn't give it to me if I didn't need it, and my family would be like, "Well, I don't know if the doctor knows exactly, you know, and so,
Well, and I think that along with the fact that it is now so widespread,
yes,
you know, the opioid epidemic, or,
Yes.
you know, it is so widespread that it is, I mean, honestly, I think everybody could say they know somebody
yes.
that is either struggling with their addiction or they've lost
I
someone.
mean, it's so bad now that working in the healthcare field, doctors don't even want to prescribe it to people who legitimately need it now
Yeah.
because,
Oh, yeah,
you
absolutely.
know, I mean,
Yeah.
I legitimately needed it, but
Yeah.
it's, they don't know where to stop with it or
Yeah.
how to be informative of it. You know, there
Yes.
needs to be
They
some
need some
kind
extra
of
training.
communication in
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
sense instead of just all or nothing.
Yeah.
You know, it's either don't give them any or give them it
Yeah.
all. You
Yeah.
know, so there's definitely still a stigma.
Yeah.
But you know,
We're working on it.
We're working
Oh,
on it.
Christina,
We are.
We are working on it.
and I don't,
Yes,
I
we
don't
are.
plan to stop
Yeah.
anytime soon.
Yeah.
So until everybody can
Yeah.
see, you know.
Anything else? Anything we missed at all? I think we hit pretty much everything I wanted to make sure got out there about Celebrate Recovery Haywood and you, and any final message to anyone?
Yeah. Just you know, if you have an issue and you feel like you're the only one, you're not.
Yes.
You're not the only one, and there's so many of us waiting to be there to help and support. And you know, you can always come back from an addiction or a
Yes.
hurt or habit or a hang up, and we're there for that.
There is hope. There is hope.
Absolutely.
Yes, and hang on to it. There is hope. No matter how dim it may seem, it
That's
is
right.
there. Yes.
That's right.
All right. Well, thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
time.